Welcome, everyone, to the second episode of the Rundown podcast. Today, I have a special guest here, Mr. Charlie Tilson. Tilson was a center fielder for the Chicago White Sox for being drafted out of New Trier High School by the St. Louis Cardinals. So, again, thank you very much for being on here and taking your time to do this. Really appreciate it. My first question for you today is, how did baseball catch your interest? Did you have any family history? And when did you realize pro ball was a possibility being drafted out of high school?
Well, first of all, Blake, thank you for having me on.
Of course.
And yeah, that's a great question and one I enjoy reflecting on. I first got into baseball because my older brother was a huge fan and
Nice.
loved playing, and I was fortunate that he included me on everything, even though I was 4 or 5 years younger. I think like when I think back to some of my earliest memories, it was wiffle ball, and we were really inspired by Ken Griffey Jr.
Oh, yeah.
I grew up, I was 10, 11, 12, like in 98 through 2001, and or maybe a little bit after that, but it was a great era of baseball. We were watching Sammy Sosa at Wrigley Field. The White Sox were exciting. Paul Konerko was
Yep.
kind of coming up. Magglio Ordonez, Carlos Lee was one of our favorites. But I definitely have a memory of doing a clinic at Wrigley Field, and meeting Mark Grace.
That's really
And
cool, actually.
yeah, those moments, like I was a Sox fan predominantly, but even watching the Cubs win the wild card in '98, I think I was just fortunate. I had a brother that really included me on everything and introduced me to the game. And it was a great time to be a fan in Chicago. And yeah, that was my introduction, and I was hooked. And as far as becoming a pro, it was always my dream, like
Right.
there was nothing outside of playing in the NBA, during the winter. I love basketball, but baseball was number one, and it was always my dream. I didn't really realize it would be obtainable until much later on, but very fortunate to have had the opportunity.
So obviously it was cool to have your brother include you on everything. And then you were drafted second round out of the Cardinals organization, right?
That's
Um,
right.
how was the process being drafted out of high school? And if you could just like expand on that, like how did it work for you?
It was very exciting. Obviously to have the opportunity to join a major league organization right out of high school,
Right.
it was really exciting. I felt so fortunate to be able to like get into my career right away and be playing against the best players, with the best coaches. And I think, I was really fortunate to be with the Cardinals, which is a great organization. I had a lot to learn though. That's for sure. It's a big
Especially coming
transition
out of high school at a young age too.
for
Makes a lot
sure.
of sense.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You go from playing, 30, 35 games in the spring, and maybe another 30, 40 in the summer, to playing 140 and traveling on buses and really very few days off in between. Now I think they do like a day off a week, but when I was coming up, we'd have 20, 25 game stretches without a day off. So physically, that was an adjustment. I had to learn, how to take care of myself. I had to get in the weight room. Um, and the level of play was tough too. I think the game just moved a lot faster. Guys obviously throwing harder, but also, offensively players were a lot better, and I had to learn how to do some fundamental things, and just understand situations in the game much better and much process it all much quicker. And one person I really think back on, who helped me tremendously early in my career, is Mike Schilt, former
Oh, way.
Cardinals manager. He was my rookie ball coach, my first year, and he didn't let anything slip through the cracks. And
Nice.
at the time I was like, man, this guy is all over me, he's like on me about every little thing, but I was very grateful for it because I needed it, and it just helped me progress quicker to the point where by the time I got to double A, triple A, I was known as someone who knew how to play the game and take advantage of opportunities, whether it was base running or knowing when to bunt, um, defensively, knowing where to throw the ball, things like that. So that helped a lot.
Yes. Then if you could just like expand on like what the process was for the draft for you. Did you have to, how did, coming out of high school, did you have to like enter anything or like register yourself? And how did you get recognized by the major league clubs?
I was invited by a White Sox scout. So it's kind of full circle getting traded back there. But
Right.
his name is Dan Durst, and he invited me to try out for the area code team, which only like 5 or 6 guys from Illinois end up making the team.
Wow.
That the team encompasses all the Midwest, and then ultimately I made it, and my Midwest team traveled out to California to play, 5 other teams from other regions, and I was not much of a draft prospect at all at that point. I was a junior. It was summer going into my senior year. I was committed to Illinois, but didn't hear from SEC schools or anything like that. And on the flight out, I sat next to him, and he gave me some great advice. He said, there's going to be hundreds of scouts in the stands, and they're just really concerned about seeing your tools. So, whether you feel like a pitcher's too quick to the plate and you might get thrown out stealing, he's like, you got to go. You got to show him that you can run. So if you get on first, I want you to steal on the first pitch, and then when you get to second, I want you to steal on the second pitch. And I, like, it was never really my style of play. I always kind of like to, let the game come to me a little bit. I like to be kind of certain of opportunities, but he really believed in me, and that was why he put me on the team, and that was why he told me, to show the scouts what I could do. And sure enough, my first at bat, I got a hit, and I
Right.
stole second on the first pitch, and I stole third on the second pitch, and like got to the dugout and scored, and all my teammates were like, wow, man, you can really run. And it just gave me this confidence, man, that it changed my career. I ended up hitting a home run later in that
Mhm.
tournament, and kind of overnight I went from not really being on the radar to really being on the radar. And I give a lot of credit to Dan Durst. He you know, gave me a great message right when I needed it. And, I spent my senior year meeting with a lot of scouts. They would come over to my house, and it's kind of like a job interview. They're trying to really get an idea of if you're someone who will be able to survive the minor league grind from 18 till 22, 23, when usually guys are able to break into the minor leagues or the major leagues. And it was it was intense, but also very exciting. Didn't I wouldn't say I had like an incredible senior year, but still got the opportunity to get drafted, and was not going to turn it down. I was really
Mm.
excited to start my career.
Right. And I'm actually going to touch on your base hit a little bit later, your first MLB single. But in 2016, you were traded for relief pitcher Zach Duke to go to the White Sox officially. How much did that matter to you? Do you pay attention who you're traded for? Do you think about it? And did you even know who he was at the time? And how does that make you feel in terms of your value?
I was I was first and foremost just so excited to be going to Chicago, because that was the team that I grew up rooting for. Like watching Scott Podsednik, really was like one of the players that like solidified, me with my tool set and watching him be able to have such an impact, like he inspired me and made me believe I could play in the major leagues. And to be traded to that organization, it meant a ton to me. And obviously getting a chance to play in the big leagues. But yeah, I think like thinking about Zach Duke, anytime you're traded for a big league player, especially, someone like him who had a lot of success
Right.
in his role as like a left-handed shutdown guy, I know that's valuable. And for me, it sort of an honor, when you're traded for a big
Right.
leaguer, because that, means the organization that you're going to, sees you as being able to fill that type of shoes. So those type of shoes. So it was, yeah, it was a big honor.
And then after being traded to the White Sox, that's when you had your first MLB at bat, I believe, right? With a single off of Anibal Sanchez. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that right. And
That's right.
then um, you hit your first MLB home run, grand slam off of Josh James. And I'm just curious, how did those moments compare to you?
Deep right field. It is a grand slam, Charlie Tilson.
Um, I think that's a great question. The difference is, my first hit was sort of like surreal in the fact, like, you know, um, just getting it hit and reaching base in the major leagues. It's just such a milestone that I had been chasing since the time I was a little kid, like I was saying. And just sort of all the lead up for me, going into that day, imagining what it was going to be like my whole career, digging into the box in the big leagues for the first time. To get a hit that first at bat, it was really special. I mean, physically, like I felt like I was floating. It was like not like the normal feeling when you're standing in the box. I was just really like excited, and you know the fact that I was able to remain calm enough to get a good pitch and put the barrel on the ball. I felt very fortunate, and then being at first base with Miguel Cabrera, who's just one of the coolest veterans in baseball, and him recognizing that this was my debut, and having a little fun with me at first. It was that was really cool. Whereas hitting my first home run, um, it was sort of a long time coming. I mean, to be honest with you, after I had the injury in 2016, 2018 was my first season back, and it was a struggle, man. I physically still wasn't feeling quite the same, and I was sort of readjusting to this, new normal. And I struggled a lot that season, especially hitting for power. But 2019, I got off to a great start, and I, was hitting for some power, and I got back to the big leagues after being DFA'd in the off season, and was really contributing that first month. So to hit that home run, it was more of like a sense of belonging in that moment. I felt like, I can really make an impact here. And I was feeling dangerous in the box, like for the first time since really 2016, prior to having a bad injury. So that was a special moment for me too. I really felt like I had come a long way. And obviously the Astros were a tough team to beat that season. So
Right.
to hit it in that moment was pretty cool.
Yeah, and then actually touching on injuries, because left strained hamstring, right? A diving play in center field. What were you feeling in that moment? Obviously, hurt a lot, but in terms of like the recovery process and returning to baseball, what were your thoughts going through that?
Yeah, it was tough, man. I actually tore it, which like was
Ooh,
different than, I had like had hamstring pulls, which are obviously um tough injuries, but this I sort of knew immediately was going to put me down for a while. And just the timing, I'd say, was unfortunate. Obviously having an opportunity in the big leagues and then, dealing with something like that shortly after is just not ideal. But it's those are the challenges that sort of come with the territory. And my biggest asset was speed throughout my career. And, I think starting out of high school, I was always trying to show people how fast I was. And, like the ways I could change the game. And, with that, I dealt with some injuries like over time. I think as years went on, I started to get a better idea of like how to take care of myself from like a strength and conditioning standpoint. For me, it was never, a lack of hard work. It was more about learning the proper things to do that are going to keep me on the field. Um, but yeah, it was challenging timing. But like I said, I got there because of my speed, and I had to use it to get up there. And I was really fortunate to have some people in my corner that helped me eventually get back, despite that big injury, which happened when I was with the White Sox, and that was probably the toughest one to get over for me. But to be able to get back meant a lot.
and on that play, would you have any regrets on how you handled that ball at all, or would you still played it the same way to this day?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I don't think I was um I don't think I was probably had a shot at catching that ball in my mind. Um, you know, we had a long inning. We were already down a few runs, and runners on second and third, 2 outs. What you're thinking as an outfielder in that moment is I need to make a play,
Yeah.
and yeah, seeing that ball go up, I felt like it's sort of similar to what I was saying with how I was feeling in the box my first
Right.
at bat. Like I felt like I could fly, man. I had so much adrenaline. I'm playing in a big league ballpark. You see that third deck, and I felt like I could fly, and I felt like, I'm going to show my teammates, I'm going to show the fans right now the kind of, X factor player I am out on defense. And, um, you know, unfortunately, I had been dealing with some ailments leading up to that point. It was that, August, and not that, I wasn't able to play, but did I have that like 110% I was going for? It unfortunately turned out I didn't have it in the tank. So it was it was yeah, probably a ball that, realistically I should have been running toward the wall and getting it into second. And but I wanted to make a play for my team.
Okay, so then after that big injury, and then after baseball, do you ever think about going back? That's my question, actually, before I start.
Going back and playing
Yeah,
again.
in the majors, yeah. Would you consider it as an opportunity, or do you think you're done for now?
I would love to play in the majors again. And the thing is, it's hard, it's hard to get those opportunities to get back into affiliated baseball. In 2020 I got released for the first time, like after a month of the COVID shutdown, when, a lot of guys were getting released. I think I got released by the Pirates on the same day as 20 other players, which was
Wow.
unfortunate. I think baseball was changing a lot, and you know, the organizations were shrinking to try to save some money during that shutdown. So that was a tough blow. That ended my career, at least temporarily, a lot sooner than I would have liked. And I spent the summer working out and wasn't able to get signed. I took a coaching job at Northwestern as the
Right.
assistant. And yeah, I just had the itch to keep playing and couldn't get a job in affiliated ball, but I went to Mexico
Mm.
and I played in Monclova with some great players. Actually, I got to play with Eric Ibar, Bartolo Colon, Addison
Nice.
Russell was on our team. Um, yeah, one of my former teammates, Alex Mejia, who I always really admired. So that was a great opportunity and got me back in it. I ended up getting signed by the Phillies. Spent the year in AAA with like Matt Vierling and Mickey Moniak and Alec Boehm, some guys who are really doing great things now. And it was a great year, man. I was hitting at the top of the lineup most of the year. I felt like I put up pretty good numbers. Unfortunately, did not get re-signed by them the next season and struggled to get picked up by an affiliated team. So I played with the Chicago Dogs for Butch
Right.
Hobson the next season, which was awesome. But um, ultimately I didn't play this past season. My wife and I had our first kid, and
Congratulations.
I appreciate that. Yeah, he's made the transition, from baseball, which can be tough. He's made it much better, but I miss it, man, for sure. I miss playing. I would love to still be playing. But the truth is, it's challenging. I think, and if you really look at independent ball, um, it's a grind, not just physically, but financially. I don't think players are quite compensated the way they should be. I'm happy
That's
to,
fair.
say that. And that was sort of the difference for me. I had a kid and I wanted to be able to spend time at home, and it's just hard to leave the family and sort of have to pay to play.
And then you also talked about like baseball changing and everything like that. So, but baseball is always changing. We've seen a lot of rule changes over the past few years. What is your opinion on like the changes that have been made? Like in terms of the pitch clock, runner on second was added a few years ago, a few years back than most recent rule changes. But how do you feel about like those rules in particular?
I was sort of iffy on the pitch clock at first,
Right. I
but
had the same opinion actually. But yeah,
yeah, I've come to enjoy it though. I think it's challenging for both the hitter and the pitcher. But it does, add another element to the game that I think is just it's not a huge adjustment. I think like at most you could just say that players might have to, get in a little bit better shape and hitters, I think it's sort of more of a mental adjustment, having to process the at bat a little bit quicker than you're accustomed to. But for fans, I think it's huge.
yeah,
I think like baseball, to really appreciate the game, you got to watch it start to finish. You really
mm,
have to understand like how, a pitcher and his performance, whether it's 4 innings or 6 innings, like how that affects the bullpen, which, bullpen guys play each role, um, the third time through the order, how at bats, tend to get, better and better offensively. I think like all those little intricacies are really what makes the game beautiful. And like when I think back to the juice balls, like it did, add an element of fun in the playoffs, like the Dodgers series, the Astros Dodgers series was
yeah,
incredible. It was like
wild.
3-run lead was nothing, and but I just don't think that is really what's gonna attract people to the game. Like obviously home runs are fun to watch, but it's the nuances of baseball that make it so beautiful. It's like, the fact that you can constantly understand more and more and more if you're really trying to. So I think to have that, shorter time frame is gonna, be much better for fans, and I think it's gonna bring in new fans. The bigger bases I like a lot.
Yep.
It's just safer for players, keeps them on the field. Um, the stolen base thing. I wish I was around for it.
Yeah.
I'll say that. But I like it. I think it adds some excitement. It forces pitchers to, kind of pitchers and catchers. Like I was thinking about it watching Ronald Acuna, like,
Crazy
especially
season this year with stolen
yeah,
bases. Yeah.
yeah, and if they try to, disengage twice, and then it forces the pitcher and the catcher to ask themselves, like, do we pitch out? Is it worth it? There's still a lot of, you know, kind of gambling in our heads taking place as players of like what's the right decision. And I like that. I think it's just making, it's a little different, but it's adding excitement. I really don't want them to get rid of umpires.
Yeah.
Like I think that's just too far. There's already technology is already playing, a huge role in the game. And I think the human element is beautiful, and the umpires are
Yep.
unbelievable. I mean, there's bad calls for sure, but on the whole, I mean, as I progressed through the minor leagues, I really, came to appreciate, the interactions, but also just the skill. It's not easy, and those guys are really pretty talented.
And then moving on from baseball here just a little bit, I saw one recent interview that you did with WGN where you talked about going back to school, majoring in psychology, right? And taking advantage of the CSP money, which for people that don't know, CSP money is the college scholarship plan that MLB offers to baseball players when they leave baseball itself. And my question is, why did you take them? Why did you recommend for people to take the money in that last interview? Like, what did it do for you, and what do you plan to do with your major while you're at the ball?
Yeah, those are great questions. Yeah, the biggest reason I recommended it is because, I like having been out of school for 10 years, and, I think like most guys who end up playing professional baseball, they're distracted as students. They're trying to,
I agree.
perfect the skill, and it takes them away from school a lot. That's what it was for me. And the number of guys who pass up this full ride to college is pretty alarming. And that's for me, like, it's just unfortunate to see as a player. I learned a lot about what I was capable of once I got into schools. Teachers at the college level, I think they, appreciate someone who's worked a career and is going back, and they sort of understood that it was a little challenging for me at first, and they helped me through that. And I just think yeah, we're offered that money for a reason. It's part of, our compensation as players. And I think everyone should take advantage of it. For me, I wasn't going to, but I'm so happy I did. And the whole experience of being in school has really opened my eyes, and made me realize, I'm capable of doing things outside of just being an athlete. And you know, I'd recommend it to any player who's interested. As far as what I'm looking to do, still, like, dipping my foot in some different areas, but I am open to coaching. I want to get my degree first, just so I, am able to do it at various different levels. I'm thinking about switching my master's into, or my undergrad into a program that's combines sociology with a master's of social work. I want to be able to work with players, not only with things on the field, like from a coaching perspective, but also be able to help them, navigate some of the challenges that come with being away from family, and, embarking on a journey that's really hard. And, there's a lot of obstacles along the way that, I certainly confronted, and, I just like to use that experience to help out other guys.
So you do have a little bit of a plan with using it to return back to baseball. At least that's what you think.
I definitely, yeah, would like to use my experience in baseball. It meant a lot to me. It was a big part of my life, and I feel like I can make a difference, with the experiences I've had. So I'd love to use that in a positive way to help other players who are, going through the same journey.
Be really cool to see you back in major league coaching someday. It would be really cool to see that. And then
Appreciate
one last thing to see or to ask here is any funny locker room stories you have? Just my last question.
it. That's a good question. You know, uh, I'll tell you a story. My first game. I don't know how funny it is, but well, there's a funny aspect to it. I was getting ready for the game in Detroit before my big league debut, and I was very nervous. I
Right.
obviously like returning to play for my hometown team. I was hearing from so many people I grew up with, and also trying to make an impression to your new teammates. For me, it wasn't like I was just going up to the big leagues in the same organization I had been in where people knew me. I was really in a brand new place, and I wanted to make a positive impression, and really demonstrate, like that I could be an impact player. And I was, putting my socks on and getting ready. It was like about 25 minutes before the first pitch, and Tyler Saladino looked at me and he said, "Dude, just wait till you get to first base. Miguel Cabrera's, the coolest guy in the league." And I was like, "Man, I'm just trying to get there, bro. Like, I'm just thinking about how I can get on first base, And he's like, "Dude, you've worked so hard, man. You've arrived in the big leagues. Like, now is not the time to stop believing in yourself.
Right.
You're going to get there, man, and it's going to be amazing." And it was just like the perfect message at the perfect time, like he was exactly right. Like I said, I dreamed of this since I was a little kid, and I worked so hard to get there. And when you reach the culmination of a lot of hard work, I think the most important thing is to believe that you're there for a reason, and just be able to put your best foot forward. And he really allowed me to do that, and very grateful for it, because that moment on first base was awesome. He tossed me the ball. He like put me in a headlock, tried to nudge me off the base. I mean, that's like Triple Crown winner, future Hall of Famer. Watching him this weekend playing his last games, just to know that I got to interact with him on the field, it's really special for me. So that was, one of my favorite moments with someone who became, one of my favorite teammates, Tyler Saladino. And then after, your first hit, your first RBI, really for me, it was my first RBI since my first game sort of had an unfortunate finish with my injury, but my first RBI when I got back up after, grinding for a year trying to get healthy, I got back to my locker. We had won a big game against Milwaukee, who was really, really good that year. I think that was Christian Yelich's MVP season. And I was just like taking off my hat and getting ready to sit down. and like a shopping cart pulled up behind me, and I was pushed in and taken through like a shower of ketchup, protein shakes, soda, everything you could possibly imagine. Baby powder, I think, was mixed in there. And it's just like, it was so cool, man. Like, you're in the big leagues, but really, you're playing a kid's game, and we're celebrating like kids. And that was like just a really cool moment. I felt like it had been a long time coming for me getting over that injury. And, I had great teammates who really made that moment special for me. And I remember getting out of that cart with my uniform, just stopping and all kinds of stuff, just thinking like, this is incredible. So that was another special moment in the clubhouse for me.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. I'm gonna end it off here. I wish you luck in wherever baseball takes you, school, whatever. But thank you so much for your time.
For sure, Blake. Thank you so much, man. It was a pleasure.
Of course. All right. Have a good one.
You too.